Hey everybody, what's up? Welcome back to the Games Cage. Today and only today, we are here with my nice little review of Sonic Generations Revisited. Recently, we played the game on my stream as we've been continuing the 3D Sonic Revisited series, and I beat Sonic Generations again, and I'm excited to talk about it. And of course, if you've been enjoying the Revisit series, make sure to follow me on Twitch to watch me play the rest of the games. Well, we've got a few more, right? We've got Lost World, I gotta play Sonic Boom, we gotta play Foo Forces, and then we're gonna get to Frontiers, and then we're finito. But of course, make sure to do that and subscribe to your boy here on YouTube. Like the video, I love you. Woo! But yeah, Sonic Generations, man. What a game, right? This is, I feel like, one of the easiest to love Sonic games in the entire series, right? I think this is one that people just look incredibly fond of. I'll never forget when I was a kid seeing the commercials for it, right when it was first announced. I'll never forget getting it. You know, the story of me getting this game was I was begging my uncle to buy this game because he had a PS3 and I didn't. I was like, this game looks awesome. I kept showing him trailers and trailers and trailers, and he was like, we'll see. And I remember he went out one day, right, on launch day, I think. I wanted him to get it, but he just wouldn't budge, right? And suddenly he came back home and he just dropped the game on the table. He just walked to his room, didn't say anything. And I was like, oh, let's fucking go. And that's my journey from back then. It began with the game leading up to what would be a game that I think to this day is so beloved and so relived by the fans with the modding community and everything. But Sonic Generations has just, since its release, has felt like a game for the fans, right? And it's felt like the one that's just so easy to play and get into, right? Because the idea was, this is a celebration game, right? You're going to bring some of the best, most beloved levels from across the series, right? And you get to play a level with 3D modern Sonic and a level with classic Sonic. It's funny looking back at this, how this is really when classic Sonic as a character was established, because I remember people were confused by it. They'd be like, oh, I guess we've separated these two. And I remember there was a lot of arguments being like, wait, what the fuck do you mean these are two different characters? And I think back then the argument was just this, oh, it's time travel, whereas now they've convoluted it where there's like different classic Sonic. It's a whole situation, but regardless, you all know the premise of Sonic Generations, and I figured I would talk about what are my favorite acts, what are my favorite things about this game. Right away, I want one thing for us to get out of the way, and that is the story. The story of this game, I think, is just ass. It's ass. It's pretty much just an excuse to go back to these levels. It starts as Sonic's birthday party, and then it just becomes them like talking to each other in like the void, being like, oh man, we gotta go here. Oh, I guess Eggman's distorting the universe to put these levels together. And classic Sonic doesn't say anything. When you free characters from their cutscenes, Sonic just looks at them and smiles. You can tell there was just no care at all put into the story, so I almost don't even want to talk about it, really. But let's get into the meat of the bone, the steak of the dinner, you know what I mean? And that is the levels, right? So the idea here is that there are three eras they explore: the classic era, the sort of 2000s era, and then the late 28s and to 2010s, I guess, era. Like, it's sort of middle adventure and then boost era, essentially what they're doing. And I remember being so excited, right? Because the idea of going back to a level like Green Hill as modern Sonic was so cool to see. How would they design these levels for classic Sonic and 3D Sonic, and also see, vice versa, right? And going back to Green Hill, I mean, that version, I think, of Green Hill has to be one of the levels I've played the most in my life, and probably the one you guys have seen the most in your life. I mean, think about how many mod videos you've seen where they start with this level. Think about how many people you've just seen play through Green Hill modern Sonic over the years, and even 2D Sonic, because it starts with the 2D Sonic version. And man, what a great level. Just what a sick introduction, especially to 3D Sonic, where the boost formula is so good. I will say it is a little bit of a downgrade from Unleashed 3D levels, because Unleashed 3D levels felt like a journey. It felt like you would be in those levels for 5+ minutes, 4 or 5+ minutes, and getting an S rank would be a difficult path, right? Whereas in this game, they give you S ranks like it's fucking candy, bro. You just beat a level with 5 rings without dying, you get an S rank typically. They give those out with candy, which I think sucks. I really do like the more challenging S ranks, but in terms of level design, man, it starts off strong, bro. I mean, mean, you're going through this green hill, you're already seeing multiple paths. It's rewarding you for boosting and jumping to a different grind rail. You have that iconic cave you go through leading up to the top with the giant fish chasing you. You get a 2D section in there still, but it's just so fucking good. While I could have lived without a 2D section in a game that already has 2D sections with classic Sonic, I think it's a really good intro. God, bro, Chemical Plant Zone, bro, is so fire, bro. The remix is so good. The different paths you could take. I feel like they did such a good job with the classic era. And I think Sky Sanctuary for Sonic 3 was also a very, very good choice. I feel like that's, you know, the centerpiece stage for Sonic 3. I could have gone with Angel Island as well, but they already had a Green Hill aesthetic, forest aesthetic. So seeing that was so good. And the classic versions of those levels are pretty good too. And I will say the most notable issue, not really an issue I have with the game, is classic Sonic to me always felt like the sort of I want to get this out the way level. And not that they're bad. I think the classic Sonic variants of each act or each zone is good. I think it's fun, but they're never the one I actively want to replay. Let me know if you disagree. Let me know if you really like those. But I always feel like when I go back to gens, I'm like, I'm here to get to the 3D level. And in fact, I'll always play the classic Sonic level first so I can earn the 3D Sonic level. And obviously, you know, it makes sense if you're a big fan of the 3D games. But yeah, that would be my one thing. But again, it's not to say it's a bad thing. I mean, Speed Highway with classic Sonic is a fun experience. I really love how they handle City Escape with classic Sonic, where they give him a little skateboard. I like how they do Crisis City having a tornado and the level is moving forward. Like, there's some really cool ideas that they go with classic Sonic. But it's also so cool when you get to the later levels and your modern Sonic. Going back to Speed Highway with modern Sonic is so cool. You know, they did such a good job reenacting the big moments from those levels and then continuing them. Crisis City is a really good one. And the big, obviously, the big set piece one to me for the game is still City Escape. I think they did a phenomenal job remaking City Escape in Sonic Generations. I think in a lot of ways, is it better? I don't know, but I do think it's equal to that feeling of it, right? The skateboarding segments are cool. I adore the gun trick at the end, suddenly chasing you and rocket flying into the sky. Love the dynamic camera stuff they do. Like, they did a really good job of fleshing out the areas, and it's probably one of the most one-to-one stages in that game, aside from a few changes towards the end. But the City Escape level is phenomenal in there, right? So I'm gushing about the game because there's just so much good to say about it in that sense. It's really fun when you get to the main levels. I will say, when you get to the last third of the game, Crisis City, while cool, a little bit, you know, simple in terms of its design. Rooftop Run, I think, is immaculate. I think Rooftop Run is also one of the best representations in the game. I think it looks phenomenal. It feels like the rewarding level. You know, to me, the rewarding levels in the game felt like Sky Sanctuary. It felt like Rooftop Run. It almost feels like that's the celebration level, right? You're getting these nice sky areas in it. You're getting some beautiful camera angles. You're getting a very good version of Rooftop Run. I do think one of the worst final levels to represent it would be Planet Wisp, because in principle, I love Planet Wisp. I think it's a good idea to have fleshed out that level and give it more time from Sonic Colors, but I think the way they did it was pretty bad. I mean, with modern Sonic, you're starting the outside part, which is really cool because it's like, you know, it's reminding you of the Colors intro starting from the beginning, where you don't really get to introduce that outside part of it. But then you go right into the factory, and the factory is just a long 2D section. You're like, oh, well, now, I mean, you could have fixed the issue with Colors where it feels like a 2D game and made it more 3D, but, you know, hey, at least whatever, it's there, you know, and it exists. I mean, it's not awful. I feel like it's such a weird letdown, you know, to end it off those ones. But overall, if we're talking about the main levels, I think just what a vibe from start to finish. I also didn't even talk about Seaside Hill from Sonic Heroes, which I think is also a beautiful one. They do a really good job with it. And like I said, I think throughout all these levels, the 3D Sonic variant of them is by far the best one. I don't think there's a single level in the game I would say the 2D variant is better. And I think whether that's a flaw or not is up to interpretation, but I still think throughout the levels are polished, they're replayable, and they're extremely fun. But there's a lot more to do in Sonic Generations. For example, right, to get to a next set of levels, you have to do these certain extra missions, right? And a lot of them vary, right? You don't have to do all of them. You just have to do one to get a key. And they vary, you know, sometimes you work with a different character you're doing a gimmick. Sometimes it's just a time trial. Sometimes it's just hold on to your rings. Like, they vary in quality quality, and some of them are more frustrating than others, but they do a good job of, you know, giving you each character to work with throughout the different, you know, series. You get a level where you play as with Cream and City Escape. You have one where Amy is tossing you upwards. So there's some cool little gimmicks in there, but there's some, you know, annoying ones. Like there's a Vector one that's really not great. There's some other ones that are just not the most fun thing to get into, right? But for the most part, it's just a little distraction. They don't make you do many of them. But what's cool is there are these extra rival battles in the game, which I think are fire. I love the rival battle that you do with Metal Sonic in the beginning of the game. That one is really cool to me. You do that, you get a Chaos Emerald. There's a fight against Shadow. Of course, you and Shadow running through the level. You know, you're trying to break these rocks to turn into Ultra. Like, I don't know, you get this Ultra ability, and that you're, you know, beating the shit out of Shadow there. So I think there's some really cool remixes and gimmicks in there. And of course, I think the best one is probably Silver's. I think Silver's is really cool, you know, where he's levitating objects around you, which I think is done better than the original game. You're dodging through them, you're trying to get close to them to hit him. So I do love that they try to do these rival battles. And on top of that, each world has a main Eggman boss, and the first one is a classic boss, final boss from Sonic 2, but he's different. It goes into sort of this 3D gimmick, which is kind of cool, where you just have to get him to hit a bomb and you go up to him and hit him. The second one is kind of crazy, and it is straight up perfect chaos, which I think that one is pretty fire. You know, I fuck with the idea here that even if you're not Super Sonic, you just go and you're fighting perfect chaos, right? And you're going through the platforming. And yeah, I think that boss fight is pretty raw. And then the third major boss fight, which I think is not the best, is Egg Dragoon. While I love Egg Dragoon in the original, this one is annoying because you're in this 3D plane, but you can't really move in 3D. You gotta sidestep, and it just goes on a little too long. It drags out a little bit. Granted, I was a little tired by the time I got to it, but it's the one I don't find myself going back to really at all. And of course, if you have played Sonic Generations, you know there is the final boss, the Time Eater, where you play as Super Sonic and Classic Super Sonic, and this is the lamest final battle in this series. I mean, I'm not even joking when I say you quite literally just hold boost, and that's it. You hold boost and you get to the center of him and you attack him, and that's it. It's lame. The characters are cheering in the background. It's so boring. It's pretty ass. I think it's almost like, it almost sucks because I feel like with a celebration game, you know, I would have loved if the final battle was like going through different big bosses from the end of the games, or using Classic Sonic for a segment, using Modern Sonic for a segment, but instead they opt into just both of them floating together, and you just kind of attack forward. You don't even ever have to go in 2D for that section, so you can just do that. But besides that, I mean, we all know Sonic Generations is a game that is near and dear to a lot of us just because polish, it's fun. And while playing it again, I realize it's not necessarily my favorite 3D Sonic because the 2D levels aren't my favorite, or some of the levels are a little shorter. I do just love playing this game, and I have to commend a big factor of this game's life is the mods, right? I think the modding community has done an insane job over the last decade, you know, adding new graphics patches to the game, adding character mods, adding levels. You know, you could deadass play Unleash in the game. You could play 06 levels in the game. Like, the way people have modded this game for the last decade is phenomenal. And obviously, if you get the game on PC, I feel like it is a must to play that game with a bunch of mods and try stuff, because there's a lot of content available to people over the last year's things. So I'm really thankful that all exists, you know. And guys, let me know, of course, what are your favorite mods? What are your favorite things about Sonic Generations? Because for me, it is easily one of my favorite games in the series, one of the most beloved ones, and I feel like this really was the peak and a really good celebration of the series. And as we get closer to a new version of that game coming out later this year, it's going to be even better because now it's going to have Shadow content in it, reliving Shadow's experience, and I cannot wait to review that content and get to it. So guys, thank y'all for watching. Let me know what are your favorite things and levels from Sonic Generations, and of course, I will see you all next time. Peace out.